Hi, Jenny. Great.
How are you?
Very well. But bearing up. I'm writing away. Writing is a sort of solitary pursuit. And so this lockdown nonsense is, plus ça change,
I know.
except I'm probably drinking and smoking too much, but otherwise, since I can't go to restaurants,
The reason we're doing these chats a bit with people that have been involved in Adelphi is just to find out a little bit more about the company and how it evolved and to what we are now. And I know you've been involved since quite early days, Charlie. You joined in 1993, is that right? How did that
whenever,
come about?
whenever it was established. You need to speak to Jamie Walker about the background. I hope you're going to speak to him. He's
I
a
will.
great
I
guy.
will.
But yeah, I was I was involved because the Jamie employed a great friend of mine called David Coates, who ran an advertising agency, a design agency rather, Maclean Coates, leading advertising design agency in Scotland, to write a little brochure for him. And David knew this was in '92, and I think it was either '92, '93, and um, and so he brought Jamie out to me one evening, and I was writing my first book about Scotch at that time, and I had just received, um, I think, 27 bottles from, then it was called United Distillers, now Diageo, full bottles to do tasting notes on.
Okay.
I'd recently completed a course in what was grandly called the sensory evaluation of potable spirits.
Oh,
And so we set about, this was organized by, well, it was in under the aegis of Heriot-Watt University. But anyway, so David and Jamie and myself set about these, um, and we had a hell of a night, I can tell you. Jamie and I became close friends, and he invited me to become a non-exec director and the nose for Adelphi. Jamie and I he would order up samples of whiskey, and I would go. I live now in Gloucester Place, and his little tiny office was on Gloucester Lane. Just I can see it from here where I'm sitting, and so I would go up there and we would look at these and decide whether they were good enough to be bottled as Adelphi single cask bottlings. And I tell you what, in those days, first of all, the the stock that one could buy was, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, it was just I remember one afternoon, for example, going up there, and he'd been offered 3 butts of Springbank um, at, I think it was 31 years old. Butts, that's sherry butts, 500-liter butts,
yeah.
and they were absolutely superb, all of them. And we spent the whole afternoon trying to decide. You could only afford to buy one, and we spent the whole afternoon trying to decide which one he should buy. I mean, now I can't imagine what a butt of 31-year-old Springbank would cost. But and indeed, you would, as we say in Scotland, so you'd sell your granny to acquire, you'd mortgage the house,
Yeah.
triple mortgage to buy them. But there were some magnificent whiskies that were available in those days. Um, and then, of course, it became more difficult, um, even during the 90s, and particularly after 2000. People, the brand owners or indeed anybody who had old whiskies
Mhm.
were because the price was going up and up, and they
Yeah.
were um, and so so it's extremely difficult. It became increasingly difficult to find whiskies of that quality and age. Um, but when Alex and when Jamie had to sell, um, and in, I can't remember when it was it about
2003,
2003?
I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and then I was retained as no longer a director, but the as the nose.
Mhm.
And one of the goals, the determination of the new owners, was to retain the quality standard of that Jamie had established, you know, and which the company has done. I advise many companies, but I can tell you one thing: Adelphi sets the highest standard.
It makes sense. You've been involved for so long, and I know you were really heavily involved in creating the blend, weren't you?
Oh yeah, that's a good story actually. This is my favorite whiskey in the world, by the way.
I love it. And I as much as I've been drinking whiskey for a long time, the first time I tried it was when I joined the company in the summer. And now I just buy it in boxes.
Well, let me tell you the story behind that, Jenny, because Jamie had borrowed some money from his grandmother to buy casks, or I mean, well, probably a cask. But she was a blended Scotch drinker, and so she said to him that I'll lend you this money on condition that you produce a blended Scotch for me. And so in between ourselves, this was always known as Granny's Blend, you see. And we came out with some sort of director's reserve or special reserve or whatever it was. But we went to a blending company. You don't put a blend together yourself, you know, because you'd be having to buy thousands of liters of whiskey. And I mean, who are we to put a blend? You need an expert. So this is a sort of what they would call an off the peg interfered with blend.
Okay.
Um, so within the price bracket, it was in the sort of not deluxe but sort of premium level. We wanted a little bit, tiny little bit more smoke, and they had access in those days to some Lagavulin, and so that was added in, and so that became the Adelphi blend, um, and the so Granny was very happy.
Great. Well,
I don't
it's
know whether
important.
she,
It's
but
important to keep your granny happy.
it's terrific whiskey. I love it. I drink it like mother's milk, I tell you.
It's great. It's such a great dram. And I don't think I don't know if the recipe is, I mean, it obviously has to change as time goes by, but I think they no longer disclose the recipe, but it's the quality's still there. It's a fantastic whiskey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, a blend changes a little bit, um, but it's still, it certainly satisfies me. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're not only are you the nose. I know you appear in shows across the world. I've seen well, I've joined a company this summer and I've been going through some of the photos through the years, and there's pictures of you in a car in the Alps, and so I know that you, Alex, have traveled together quite a bit,
Yeah, yeah.
spreading the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, I travel a great deal. I mean, um, I mean, year before last, I was 23 times abroad, 17 countries, you know, and so I do travel quite a lot. But my regular tours and my favorite tours are with Alex, when we visit his distributors in Germany and the Netherlands and so on. Um, and the occasion you're talking about is when he's a great driver. He's a very good driver, and he likes fast cars. But on this occasion, he had a Mini Cooper, and we were driving through Switzerland, and we did the shot, as you may remember, of the what was that film, um, but anyway, we had
You
a
were
lot of.
only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. No?
No, no, we didn't have the butterfly doors. Oh, that was his. No, oh well. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
we have a lot of fun, and you know, he drives fast, and I tend to nap and we have conversations from time to time, but then he's got a very good sort of playing list on his
Oh, yeah.
so the music plays and I nap and he drives, and we drive from one place to another and do the gigs and do whatever needs to be done. Although I do miss it a bit, you know, yeah,
Miss the people.
yeah. Oh gosh. Oh, I've got such good friends all over the world.
Yeah.
The from these travels and so on. Mm.
It is an interesting time. We're obviously taken to doing things like this over the internet and meeting on Zoom. And we're the Adelphi team and the American team have been really busy launching whiskey in the middle of a global pandemic. It has had its challenges, but in a way, we've been able to see quite a lot of people as well. So it's been good.
Yeah.
It's been really good.
And in some ways you see more than you would physically.
Yeah,
This,
right.
this whole Zoom business is going to be. It'll
Mhm.
continue. It'll continue.
We're all quite tech savvy these days. We know how to log on and we can watch things on our laptops and our phones. We know how to use it. You can still reach the general public that way. So it's good.
Speak for yourself, Jenny. I'm pretty.
You're here.
pretty,
You're here.
pretty competent.
Let's see how this turns out. We'll see. You talk about Scotland a lot and whiskey a lot, but it was the comment about whiskey, and you said it's the blood of our small nation, and I just think you just hit the nail on the head there. It's such a lovely way of describing it.
Well, the full quote, and it's not my quote, as a matter of fact, because
Oh,
I was quoting Nick Morgan, Dr. Morgan.
okay.
So I must acknowledge it. And the full quote was, and I remember him at a tasting, and he's a very calm man, and a scholar. Let me get my bottle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he didn't have a bottle of Adelphi.
Oh.
I have. But he said, and he rather lost his patience, which is unusual for him. And he said, listen, he said, when you buy a bottle of whiskey, Scotch whiskey, you're buying a hell of a lot more than liquor in a bottle. You're buying craft, you're buying history, you're buying tradition. It went on. And then finally said, and you're buying the blood of one small nation.
And I really love your language that you use. And it's obviously to do with you being you're a writer, you're an author. But it's just the way you describe it, you almost, it triggers memories and it's a feeling, emotion, rather it's just a drink in a glass.
This is apart from the history of Scotch whisky, this is my key area of interest, and I'm very glad you touched on it, because I try and write tasting notes which are evocative, but it's a combination of subjective and objective, because obviously and both are completely legitimate. Most consumers' tasting notes are their own memories, their own perceptions. And whatever you might smell is legitimate. Even if it's a bad smell, it's completely legitimate. So use the language you like. But that part of the brain that actually it's sort of in there, and which picks up smell, the olfactory epithelium, it picks up these things. But that part of the brain, which is called the limbic system of the brain, is also the seat of emotion and of long-term memory. And so smell is so close, more than any of our senses, is so closely related to long-term memory. And so it brings back recollections of childhood in particular. And when you get used to it, it can bring back whole visions. You need to control it, because it's obviously, because that's very subjective. I don't, if I can, I will indulge that, but only for fun. If I'm doing a sensory analysis, I'll use a nosing glass, a Copita or a Glencairn glass, and assess it very carefully. And indeed, if this sort of thing has to be done before lunch. And really, by the time you've done 3 max, your nose is tired. You can't really analyze, but and the language that I use is structured as the trade would, as a blender would,
Yeah.
in terms of the first impressions. Well, I tend to follow a perfumer's guide, top notes, mid notes, base notes, and I assess in that way.
And those can be found on that on the flavor wheel that you developed. I really like that. I've been using that quite a lot throughout my
Oh, I'm
career. Yeah,
delighted. Well, I'm very glad you mentioned that. They're available actually through Adelphi or through Charlie Maclean or
yeah,
through my website. But
yeah. I'll put a
yeah,
link.
that was born out of that course,
Mhm.
because the Pentlands had put together the very first flavor wheel
Yeah.
in 1979, I think it was, and it was for the trade only.
Okay.
And so they included off notes and things which would not be acceptable or understandable. And there was a lot of chemical language and so on.
Yeah.
And so I worked on this with Jim Swan, my master, and Sheila Birtles, who was also training on this course, to put together a more acceptable, and then to produce it in a kind of artistic way.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you like that.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
it's so helpful. And I know, so when I was a student, I was a student at Heriot Watt, and I worked in a whiskey shop, and we would stand, and there'll be times where you didn't have much to do. And some people would maybe say, oh, well, you shouldn't need help like that to understand the flavors or the notes of a whiskey. But I don't think, and they saw it almost as in cheating. Whereas I look at it differently. I think when you have the guide there, you're better asking the question instead of just going in, what can I find? You ask yourself, can I find peat? Can I find
Exactly.
talk?
Exactly. That's
And
the
that's,
way exactly. And I mean, my descriptors are merely possible guidelines,
yeah,
So if you, so if you divide it up to fruity, floral, peaty, woody, whatever, and
yeah,
and and so when I'm running a tasting, or if I'm indeed interrogating myself,
yeah,
uh, and I say it's fruity, and then I think, now, is it fresh fruit, dried fruit, cooked fruit, citric fruit? Um, and then you extend from there what it might be in the outer ring of the, if it's cooked fruit, is it baked apples? Is it tarte tatin?
mm,
Is it, whatever,
yeah,
so it's merely a guide, but and hopefully a help.
yeah,
And as like you, I just say, I run it through my mind when I'm nosing a whiskey. I'll run it through. Am I getting any fruit notes? Am I getting any wood notes? Am I getting any peaty notes? Am I getting any whatever it is? And um, it's merely a guide. And then, but the key thing I always say is to use your own language.
I loved it. So you must still be sent so many samples to try, and you still have the enthusiasm, and you have your ways of trying to analyze the notes. Um, do you think you'll ever get bored of it?
No, no. Um, it has to be said that, I mean, the last time I did a count, Jenny, which is some years ago actually, um, I was looking at about 1,000 samples a year.
A year?
With in competitions, with
Uh,
through looking at serious, and competitions, you smell, taste, spit, and then mark them out of 100 or out of 10 or whatever. So that doesn't really count. But I'm looking at a lot of samples all the time. I mean, almost every day. I
yeah.
have to tasting notes or whatever, and assess whiskey. So there's a lot of experience there. Um, People say to me, they say, hey man, you've got the best job in the world. I mean, just drinking whiskey. I mean, how do you do it? How do you get a job like that? They say. I say practice.
Well, we're all doing that now. That's what to do. Do you remember any spectacular? Is there ever anything that stands out and you remember specifically a whiskey that you think this is one of the best I've ever tried? Do you have, or did they just sort of become at the end?
They tend to merge. I mean, I
Yeah.
told you the story about the 31-year-old Springback. I do remember with Alex tasting some of these young Glenrothes, which started at 5 years old. And I mean, they were absolutely astonishing. They were eye-opening in the right cask. You know, how even at 5 years old, you could get a superb, great color, you know, a superb whiskey. And I think that he bought, you know, a number of casks, which were then released gradually. But they were astonishingly good. Age is a guide, but it's not infallible.
No.
It's all to do with the quality of the spirit and the nature of the wood in which it's been matured. Mm.
I think having tried so many samples and working in industry for, I think, 30 years, almost 30 years, is it true that they...
Actually, 40 years this year, actually.
40?
Yeah, 81, when I started to research and write about whiskey.
That's 40. That is 40.
That's right, isn't it? I'm not very good at the maths.
No, but you're right. I mean, 81. I remember going to school in 81. But if it's you've never had your name on a bottle of whiskey until 2020, last year, when Maclean and Bruce bottled an Ardnamurchan with Adelphi.
That's right.
Isn't that incredible? So you've been in the industry for that long. It took that long, and then finally somebody put your name in a bottle, and it's some bottle.
The simple reason for that is that you know, if I were to identify myself very closely with a brand, then my independence would be jeopardized.
Of
you
course.
know,
because you work with many companies, I know. Yeah.
But with my fondness, my close association with Adelphi oblique Ardnamurchan, and also working with Vicky Bruce, Alex Bruce's wife, on this travel agency thing, which I hope she will tell you about.
Yeah.
And Alex was prepared to release an unbelievably nice cask of Ardnamurchan. So I'm more than happy to identify myself with that.
Well, it was so popular, I didn't get a bottle. It was just flew out.
Nobody did.
It sold out.
I think it sold out in about 4 hours.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think it even broke the internet at some point. But I know it's some of the bottles are making their way around Europe right now, and the rest of the world, I think, as well, are getting some bottles from it. But it was 2 big sherry butts that were bottled from Ardnamurchan by Adelphi with the Maclean and Bruce logo on it, and your tasting notes to it in a little foreword. It was beautiful. I tried a sample. I was very lucky. And it was such a stunning whiskey. Really liked it.
Well, I'm so glad. I mean, that was one that I could happily put my name to.
You have been involved in whiskey blending. I saw a film on YouTube with yourself and Arthur and Keir from Royal Mile Whiskies, where you were blending the Maclean Pillage, whiskey.
Yeah, that's right.
And this was to be bottled for your charity, for the brewers, the 3 sons who rowed across the Atlantic.
Exactly.
I mean, there's so many questions around that. First of all, as a parent, I can't imagine having all my children in a boat crossing the wild sea. How did you sleep that Christmas? I mean, how did you even? How could you function?
Well, my wife and I were faced with a fait accompli. Yeah. They had decided, you know, and so Jamie, my middle boy's godfather, is Alexander McCall Smith, the famous writer, and they went to him, and they were looking for a little testimonial, and he said, I remember we had lunch together, and he said, this is a very bad idea, the idea of the eggs in one basket. And he said, there are many simpler ways of crossing the Atlantic nowadays than rowing, And so he was not supporting. He would not support them. I mean, obviously he did sort of, he was not going to contribute to the fund, but he did, and ultimately. So there was a certain nervousness, but I mean, Sheila and I, my wife and I were the boys have been always, even as small children, incredibly agile, incredibly inventive, incredibly, active,
Yeah.
and the active and able. And so, frankly, we had no doubt that they would be able to tackle this challenge. And of course, they approached it in the most rigorous way. I mean, in terms of training, in terms of diet, in terms of every aspect of, and then not least the fundraising side of things. And so, key to the initial fundraising, part of their training program actually was this row up the west coast when they'd got the boat. To do a row up, a 300-mile row up the west coast, and the thing was, it was so-called whisky for water, and the response was immense, immense, and all the distilleries, all the distilling companies, they put up, they contributed bottles, from one bottle, I won't say who that was, to 36 bottles, from an average. I had something like 360 bottles. Was it 360 or 600 and something? I can't remember. It's more than 600 and odd bottles to deal with. So the idea was to produce what we call a vatted malt, a blended malt. Now, tricky thing, because some of these whiskies, Lagavulin, Laphroaig, etc., are very smoky, and and so if you can't just dump the whole lot into a blend, because it would lack all balance, and it would be dominated, in this case, dominated by smoke. And then William Grant's Girvan, with Girvan Grain Distillery, they very graciously said, "Hey, do you want some grain whiskey?" And so it came out that and thanks to them, that so we could construct a blended malt, and then all the residue could be then blended with grain whiskey from Girvan, to make a blended Scotch. So there were two whiskies made, which they called Pillage and Spillage, and Richard Patterson at White and Mackay advised me about blending, and then, as you say, Keir and Arthur Motley from Royal Mile, who are doing all the fulfillment, all the distribution of this. They advise. They're both very good noses, and so they and Alex Bruce, we put together we chose the proportions that went into the pillage, and then frankly the rest went into spillage. But then Richard advised, well, we did some tests, and it was I think it was 50%. Oh no, I think 6% malt and 40% grain in the second bottle, the spillage bottle, and it was amazing, because everybody involved, I mean, the packaging company, for example, the designers and so on, the designers did it cost the packagers, Blue Box, who did this gorgeous boxes that they came in, all for free. I mean, unbelievable, all for free, all for charity.
They did it, and not only did they do it, they broke records doing it.
They broke 3 world records, and well, it's been a bit halted now. but their goal was to raise £250,000 for charity, and I think currently they're at about 220. You know,
Okay.
they're nearly there, and everything's been a bit halted
Yeah.
this year, obviously. But what an achievement! I mean, it's
Oh.
fantastic. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Alexander McCall Smith, because I'm such a big fan. I read all the books, and I think I even started reading them when I lived in Sweden, and then when I moved to Scotland, I ended up working in the travel agents at Edinburgh University. So I was part of the team that booked Sandy's trips across the world.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, and you appear in one of his books. Is it Scotland Street that you
Yep.
appear in? That's funny.
I appear as the Duke of Johannesburg.
Oh, I couldn't remember, but a whiskey auctioneer, or was it a whiskey?
No, well, actually, I appear on several occasions. Once, well, a couple of times under my own name, this is a whiskey thing,
Yeah,
and but also as the Duke of Johannesburg.
the fun you can have with
Yeah.
that. That is good.
I really should have business cards made, you know, to Charles Maclean, Duke of Johannesburg.
Well,
Okay.
enjoy. I don't have a glass, but I'm going to have a drink of this because I do like. It's such a nice, easy, enjoyable drink.
Great.
Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Oh, shit. God bless you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.